So, I'm the fourth generation owner of a small farmhouse built in the late 1800s. My great-grandparents bought it sometime around 1920. At that time, there weren't really many houses built in the area, and there were no paved roads. An old graveyard, still in use today, is on the ridge above us. The family, through all these years, have claimed that the house is haunted, but that the ghost is friendly, so no one has ever been afraid. Backstory to the ghost is that it's perhaps the spirit of a man wrongly accused, late 1800s before my family, of theft. A man's wallet had been stolen, and footprints led to this house, where a man was found sleeping in the woods. The story tells that the man was promptly strung up in an elm tree in the corner yard where he died. The tree continued to stand until last year when we cut it down due to too many dead and dangerous limbs. I will add here that my great-grandfather was chopped into many pieces by a train in the mid-1960s, and his wife died here in the early 70s. But evidently the ghost story precedes these events. There have been many witnesses over the years to a loud slam that happens from time to time that seems to be in the basement, which is a dugout. But when checked, the basement door is padlocked. The slam can even be heard over the phone by people on the other end of the call. We, too, keep the door padlocked, but we experience the slam from time to time. There's someone whistling a tune just outside a window, with, of course, no one there is another tale, though no one other than my great-grandma ever heard this, until me. I lived in the house for a short time 40 years ago, and during this time I heard someone whistling a particular tune that was a fond memory for me. A friend used it as a signal for me to sneak out of the house on our summer nights when I was a teen. I checked, no one there. So, I told my mom about it, naming the Civil War-era tune. She had a strange look on her face and told me that she'd forgotten this was the very song that my great-grandma claimed to have heard. While she had told me about her having heard the whistling, she had never related the tune to me. Mom was quite jealous, actually, that I'd heard it. Many years passed. The house was rented out for a couple of decades or so, and then was basically abandoned and left to ruin for a period of several years. I came in about 5 years ago and restored both house and yard, which was a terrible, brambled-up mess. 2 weeks of serious work was needed in the yard before we started inside. During this time, my boyfriend and myself often heard a very loud, clear whistling of old-fashioned tunes that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, as it sounded the same from all areas of the yard. We would search for the source, a neighbor in their yard perhaps, but there was never a soul around us. Weird, but not scary. We hired a man to help us do the interior work. Walls and ceilings all had to be replaced, everything gone but wall bones and a roof. One afternoon, he stepped out for a break. He stepped back in to ask who was whistling so beautifully. My boyfriend and I laughed and told him about the ghost. He said that we were BSing him and went for his own investigation. He ended up leaving for the day a believer in and scared of the ghost. We remained friends after the job was done, and he's always wary of the house noises when he visits. It's funny, really. But now. I had ordered some trial creams for after bathing. Hang with me here. It was a 15-day trial that arrived on a very large, 10x5 folded card, with small pouches that held 2 packets for each day. It was large, thick, visible. I used it for 3 days. My boyfriend and I share the same vanity in which I stored the card. He was familiar with it. The fourth day, it was gone. This very large card is nowhere. We turned the bathroom upside down, cleaned and reorganized everything in the entire bathroom. Gone. I searched again the next week, tweaking my organization, hoping in vain to find the large card. I was proud of my clean bathroom, but no large card. I opened the vanity 2 days ago, and there it is, front and center. I called my boyfriend in, simply pointed, and he, having already seen it, said, "I know, right? Where'd you find it?" I've given it much thought. I'm not being ridiculous. I did not overlook it, and it was not there. But here it is, front and center. My boyfriend has no guile, and I completely believe he is innocent of this being a possible prank. He's laughing about the matter, sort of, but he appears to think that I'm making too much out of it. I think he's worrying about my mental health, or possibly Alzheimer's. I'm 60. All I know is it was there. It disappeared for a week, and then it was there. Just to note, I'm retired and always home. Boyfriend is semi-retired, works 20 hours, or is otherwise home. We have only rare visitors who are directed to the guest bath. No one would have had access to the room, much less been interested in such an inconsequential item in order to play a prank. I hadn't spoken of the creams to anyone but my boyfriend. Has my ghost moved it up a notch to poltergeist? Or am I suffering dementia? Edits to add, there was another incident where I lived here 40 years ago. 2 friends were visiting. There was a not loud but very audible noise in the next room. We all heard it. It sounded like someone was pulling a heavy couch, perhaps along the wood flooring. But there was no one there. They left, believers and scared. But again, it did not scare me. To begin, this happened about 10 years ago, and I've only ever told this to a few people face to face. Most people think it's a tall tale. It was honestly one of the most unsettling things that has ever happened to me, and changed me from a condescending skeptic into somewhat of a believer. Background. When I was a 22-year-old second-year uni student, no drink, no drugs, living in the Stoke area of the UK, I rented an old middle terrace house in second year with my then girlfriend and some friends. It was a creepy, dark house, as it only had windows at the front and the back. It had a dingy and damp old basement with lots of old furniture stuffed inside, and a black cat that would show up at the back door every night meowing, which I befriended and fed. It was also creepy because of the dark and muddy cul-de-sac that served as a communal courtyard and car park. All of this didn't bother me, however. I grew up in a pretty creepy old house built in the early 1800s. It did, as I later learned, bother my downstairs housemate and his girlfriend who heard regular footfalls at night in the highway and adjacent living room only to find nobody when he would sneak out to look. I also discovered a year after this event that the students who lived there the year prior all believed the house was haunted, and were glad to move out. So, the main story. My term time ended 4 weeks after all of the other tenants, because I had to do clinical placement. This meant I lived in this large house alone, which I loved. I'm an introvert, and I love alone time. It started great. For 2 weeks, I enjoyed it despite the background creepiness. I would just reason away any creepiness as I still do now. However, after the 2-week mark, I became aware of a creeping sense of dread that I couldn't rationalize or find cause for. I'm not an overly anxious person, and I enjoy my own company, and nothing weird had happened. I began to feel very unwelcome, and very much not alone. I felt how a prey animal must feel when they feel eyes on their back. I began to feel so scared that, even in the day, I would take the 3-mile walk onto campus and sit and work in the library if not on placement. I would come home and be afraid. I even devised a system for moving around the house at night without ever being in an unlit area. I also did this during the day in the windowless areas. I had to move from my large comfy room into the smallest bedroom, lock the door, and sleep with my back to a wall, often with the light on. I was inexplicably afraid. On the final day, I had to lock all the windows, turn off all the plugs, and get some stuff from the basement and lock the back door before I left. I was utterly terrified, and I felt like I was moving in slow motion the entire time. I went around systematically ensuring that a light was always on, and that I wasn't in darkness. I'd piled all my stuff, backpack and duffel bag. The rest was mercifully packed in my car the day before, at the front door. This is where it gets really scary, and I cannot explain what happened adequately. It was late afternoon and still light outside, but the house was dark. I steeled myself to turn the hallway light off, but the light switch was about 4 meters from the front door at the foot of the stairs. It was night dark upstairs, which was normal because no windows and all the doors shut. I turned the light off and scurried away without turning my back to the stairs. The daylight still lit the hallway from the open front door, but as I got to the door, the strangest thing happened. My neck hairs stood on end. To my shame, if I needed to pee at the time, I think I would have peed myself. I could feel, or see, I can't really explain, a black and viscous, shadowy cloud slowly making its way down the stairs towards me. I felt such malevolence. I basically tripped backwards into the street and into daylight, shut the door, and everything felt fine. Like nothing had just happened. I locked the door and posted the key through the letterbox and have never seen the house again. The only way I can explain the feeling is to liken it to a Dementor and Ringwraith attack. Except there wasn't a caped humanoid figure chasing me. I couldn't see it, but I knew. The fear and dread was indescribable, and I have never since experienced anything like it. I had, nor have, no mental health issues. I was happy and not stressed at the time, etc. I even feel crazy and embarrassing relating the story. Are there any other experiences like this? In 2006, I went on a choir tour of Spain and France. The tour started in Madrid and ended in the Aquitaine region and Toulouse. This experience happened in Lourdes, France. Already in Spain, I was having many déjà vu experiences and memories of past life recall. One of the strangest experiences was visiting the Cathedral of Burgos and being able to talk with a tour guide with complete familiarity about the church. At the end of the tour, she said, "You know a lot." I even took some of our group who didn't do the paid tour back the next day, and did the entire thing exactly as she done it the day before. But the most unequivocal paranormal experience happened in Lourdes. Lourdes is a small town in southwest France that is famous for Saint Bernadette, a teenage shepherdess who had visions of the Virgin Mary in 1858. On our first day in Lourdes, our tour guide told us about how it had been a Roman outpost before Christianity, with a temple to the water goddess. This is important, because all of the imagery in Lourdes is water imagery. There is a huge tank of water to be dunked in to heal the sick. Everywhere you look, there are bottles in the shape of the Virgin Mary. Your travel through the town is constantly interrupted by streams and rivers of people. You get the idea. Sick Catholics flock to Lourdes for pilgrimage and healing. It's extremely common to see groups of people in wheelchairs and even on stretchers at the site. Especially the grotto where Bernadette had her visions, and on top of which the Church of Lourdes is built. This is the main pilgrimage site. Although I'm not Catholic, the tour guide had piqued my curiosity and I decided to go down to the grotto to vibe it out. In front of the grotto was an empty space followed by 5 or 6 rows of benches, with more empty space behind it. All of this was fenced in. When I got there, I wasn't able to go into the grotto because it was the designated time for stretchers. The benches in the center were full, but there was a bench at the very back against the fence, where I decided to sit and wait. The minute I sat down, I began to feel a buzzing that only got stronger and stronger. The energy was so strong that it pushed my head down towards my knees, so that I looked like I was genuflecting. Through the buzz, I heard this voice say, "You will see where Bernadette saw the lady for the very first time." As usual, I was skeptical, but I took it under consideration. At around this time, the stretchers moved out of the area, and people started lining up from the benches to the center. I moved at those center benches, starting at the left corner until it filled up. As it did so, I slid down the bench until I was sitting at the far right corner of it. Once there, I thought maybe I should say some kind of oblation, so I started singing the choral version of Ave Maria, which we were singing on the tour, in my head. As I did so, the buzzing vibration became overwhelming and I started silently crying. The entire bench held space for me while I cried without ever speaking to or touching me. After I finished crying, I knew that I didn't need to go to the grotto. I had had my Lourdes grotto experience. When I reached down to get my backpack, I saw a bronze plaque on the ground which said, "This is where Saint Bernadette saw the Virgin Mary for the first time, on the 11th of February 1858. I'd been sitting on that spot the entire time. I swear on everything that I love that this is a true story. You don't have to believe me, but I want to share it anyways. I was 7 or 8 years old and lived in a house with just me and my mom. It was a fairly big house, with 4 bedrooms, and my room was at one end of the landing, and my mom's room was at the other end. If you were to stand by my bedroom door, you would look down the hallway and see my mom's bedroom door, as well as the top of the stairs. Anyways, my 2 slightly older cousins, 9 female and 11 female, had come over for a sleepover, and we had spent the whole evening/early night playing around and doing childish things as you do. My mom told us it was time for bed, and they went to sleep in the spare room and I went to my bedroom. When I was younger, I had really bad trouble sleeping and would often wake up around 2 to 3 a.m. and walked down the hall and go into my mom's bed and sleep there. Almost every night I would do this. Anyway, so it comes to about 3 a.m. and I wake up. I get out of my bed, and I open my door as quiet as I could to not wake anyone else up. As I rub my eyes and look down the hall, I see a floating dress with tears in it that looked exactly like what you would expect a wedding dress that has been worn by someone living in a forest or on the streets. It had tears in it, it was a bit muddy at the bottom, It was floating almost like it was moving through water. There was a woman wearing this torn and muddy dress walking down the stairs. I remember freezing and slowly walking back, closing my door a bit and getting into bed. I put my pillows over my head and closed my eyes and pretended I was asleep. I can't remember how much longer I was awake for before falling back asleep, but the first thing I did when I woke up was tell my mom and cousins. Obviously, as a little kid, my mom didn't believe me and my cousins thought I was trying to scare them. I'm 20 years old now, moved houses a long time ago. I remember this woman walking down the stairs so clearly that I could draw you a picture of it now. I tell this story to people to this day and obviously no one believes me. But I swear on everything that I saw something that night. There was something in my house. Hi, I was hoping that someone on here could give me some advice. Because frankly, I've gone from worried to terrified in the last few nights. I haven't been one for believing in the supernatural, but at this point, I don't know what else it could be. I have brought this up with my family and they laugh it off like it's nothing, only reminding me that this is just like I'm a child again. I apologize for any spelling issues as I wasn't very good with that kind of stuff in school. Some backstory. I'm 25, male, and I was self-employed as a joiner. I guess handyman to you Americans. Unfortunately, I had a stroke back in April. Until then, I was perfectly healthy, but due to work stress and a family gene linked to them, I had a bad one. This is all just context to why I recently moved back in with my grandparents. My rent wasn't cheap, and myself and my partner couldn't afford to keep living there without my income, so we decided until I'm better that we'll move back in with our families. It really sucks, and I wish that she was with me right now through all of this. So, last month, with the help of my brother and father, we moved me and my dog into my grandparents' fairly large house in the countryside. They have 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a large living room upstairs and downstairs. The kitchen, the dining room, the living room, another bathroom, and down a small corridor at the back of the house, 2 more bedrooms. It was basically like living in an apartment myself, without the worry of being in people's way, as my grandparents don't come downstairs unless it's to go shopping or for food. Now this is where things started to go from bad to worse. About a week ago, I caught what we think was the norovirus, and due to my current health, it unfortunately floored me. I was horribly sick and feeling tired all the time, and just losing my will to live. So I would take comfort in the times that I could sleep. In sleeping, though, I started to have this nightmare. I was lying in the bed in my room, and I could feel like someone or something was watching me from the corner of the room closest to the window. I couldn't see anything actually there, but I know that something was. It unsettled me. It was like a stranger following you late at night, and you don't know their intentions. This keeps happening. Each sleep, the feeling was there. In the last 2 nights, it's gotten worse. Saturday night was the first time that I caught a glimpse of it. Like a man. A really tall man made of pure darkness. Like Vanta Black in the heart of an abyss dark. He was standing in the corner of the room where I felt like someone was watching me. I felt like the entire dream was only a few seconds long. I saw him and woke up immediately drenched in sweat. When I finally calmed myself down, I went upstairs to my grandparents' living room. I waited until they got up and I had a chat with them about my dream. When I told my grandma about it, she laughed and said that I sounded like I was 5 years old again, talking about the scary monster in my dreams. The same scary monster. How, as a kid, I would complain whenever I slept here because there was a scary man watching me, until I refused to sleep over. Hearing all this scared the living daylights out of me, and it makes me want to leave, but I have nowhere else to go. My grandparents' house is the only family that had space for me and my German Shepherd. Last night, I was determined to keep myself awake all night, and maybe find a friend's sofa to accidentally fall asleep on. However, it hit 4 a.m. and I couldn't prevent myself from sleeping any longer, and I crashed. In my dream from last night, the man was moving, reaching out for me. You know when you have that feeling like you're in a dangerous situation, like standing too close to a cliff's edge? I felt like that. Like whatever this thing was, I could not let it touch me, or something very bad would happen. I'm not sure what, but something very bad. In my dream, I rolled over the bed and half stumbled into the door with a slam, as it was inches away from touching me. In the moment I slammed into the door, I woke up in the exact same position that I was in my dream, with the exception that my dog was now there, hackles up, and growling angrily in the direction that thing was in when I was asleep. This all but confirms to me that this thing isn't just in my head. I don't know what to do, or where to go next. I'm kind of scared that I'm going to die. Does anyone know what this is, or how I can protect myself? Please, can someone help me? Update. I appreciate everyone's support here. My best mate let me take his couch last night, and I had the best night's sleep that I've had in a while. Unfortunately, it's only temporary, as he's getting ready to go offshore again and his partner will be home from her holiday on Friday. I've taken a lot of your advice, and I've booked an appointment with my local GP. However, the earliest appointment wasn't until the 20th. I reached out locally to a woman that my friend swears could cleanse the room, too. She'll be able to stop by Thursday afternoon. I hope all the things that I've taken will help me move on from this. I just don't know if this truly is in my head, or if it's something more. I'll let you guys know what happens in a couple of days. Thank you all again. I have a semi-interesting story. For as long as I can remember, I've always had extremely vivid dreams, to the point of not being able to tell my real life from my sleeping one. As I got older, some of these dreams started to become premonitions. Some have come true weeks or even years later. For example, 2 years prior to moving to another province, I had a dream about myself sitting in a small shack, legs up on a desk, looking at a fence with a giant truck coming in. I was wearing a construction onesie, all blue, jumper, high-vis straps, steel-toed boots, and a hard hat. I was 20 at the time of this dream and in my club and super girly mode. No way in hell would you ever catch me in that outfit. Lo and behold, 2 years later, I move to Alberta. I start working in a refinery and I'm sitting at the desk, feet up, and a truck pulls in, and my dream hits me like a slap to the face. Now to start the real story. I have to preface this with, at this point in time, I had only ever dreamt of my childhood home, obviously my safe space, as I lived in 5 homes after this and never dreamt of any of them. This dream happened in Alberta, in a house that I had only lived in at the time for roughly 6 months. I lived with my boyfriend at the time and his younger brother. We also had 2 cats and a dog. We lived in a 3-floor townhouse. Bedrooms upstairs, the stairway was in the kitchen. Back about 10 feet from the base of the stairs was the back door to our parking spot, and the living room entrance opposite the back door but off to the side of the kitchen. So, I go to bed, and the dream starts with my walking down the stairs into my kitchen. There's a pasta pot on the front burner of the stove, and it's on fire. I freak out because I have nothing to stop the fire. I wake up from my dream, walk out of my bedroom, look down the stairs, and the kitchen lights off. No lights at all coming from downstairs, so I go back to bed and I fall asleep. At some point, I fall back into the same dream. I'm walking down the stairs to my kitchen. The pasta pot is on the stove again, but now the entire stove and wall behind it are on fire. I can feel the heat on my face. I panic, trying to wake everyone up as my boyfriend is asleep upstairs. His brother is asleep in the basement. I'm trying to locate my animals, but I can't find anyone or anything. I wake up again, this time way more frazzled. I walk out to the top of the stairs again, and all is still normal. I go to the bathroom and try to shake off the feeling of terror from the dream. I eventually fall back asleep, only to fall back into that same dream for a 3rd time. Now, this time I was walking down the stairs, and I can see before the base of it that the entirety of my kitchen is on fire. Red-hot flames are licking all the walls, black smoke everywhere. It hurts to breathe, and it's hot as hell. I get into the kitchen to see the same pasta pot on the stove. The wall of fire is blocking the living room door entrance, and my dog is on the other side of it barking like crazy. I can't get to him. As I hit the floor, the stairs behind me were also set ablaze with both of my cats at the top of the stairs hollering. I can't save anyone. I want to run to open the back door as that's the only safe route to go, but my brain is like, oxygen will blow the house up. What do I do? I woke up, sweating buckets, crying my eyes out. I leave my room to go check out the kitchen, and now there's a light on. I freak out, and I run downstairs. Guess what I find? My stovetop is on, with the pasta pot on the front burner. All of the water had boiled off, and it had started to turn red. My boyfriend's little brother came home drunk from the club and tried to make food, but passed out in his room. My mom thinks it was my great aunt protecting me as she had just passed earlier that year. Part of me thinks that I also may have some natural abilities for this, as it's happened in the past, but never that instantly. Any insights or similar stories? So, I'm 20 years old, and I'm getting married to my fiancé in October. And I know that the house across the street from us is haunted, and we maybe stirred up the spirits doing a little spooky ghost investigation, but me and my best friend have both seen something dark. I am a Christian, and I believe in the paranormal. One day when my fiancé was at work, I heard what sounded like my soon-to-be brother-in-law's voice from the living room. It sounded like him saying my name and asking if I was downstairs. Me and my fiancé live in a basement apartment. This wasn't abnormal because he would come down and ask me questions, so I answered with, "Yeah, what is it?" But there was no response. I then heard what sounded like the screen door closing, so I thought maybe he left. I got up to investigate, and there was no one there. I called my soon-to-be mother-in-law and she asked him if he came downstairs, and the scary thing is that he said he hadn't been down there at all. I know what I heard, and it sounded exactly like him. That's not the scariest part. Yet another day, my fiancé was in the restroom and I saw him go in there and heard the door close. As I'm on the couch, not even a few minutes later, out of the corner of my eye, I see what looks exactly like him. Tall, gray sleep shorts and a shirt, standing outside the bathroom. Which, admittedly, I thought was weird because I had heard the door close. So I look up, and he's not there. A few minutes later, he comes out from the bathroom. My best friend was over, and it was time to go to sleep, so I was praying when I thought I heard her whisper my name, so I stopped praying and asked what she wanted. But she swears that she never said a word. That being said, one day she was in the shower, and the water was running, but I wasn't paying much attention. So I didn't hear the water stop running. When out of the corner of my eye, I see what looks like her curly hair, and her tie-dye shorts, and one of her shirts. And again, I know for a fact that she is in the shower. So I look up to say something to her, and she's not there. Not a few minutes later, she comes out of the bathroom. Another day, I'm sitting at the table eating, and my fiancé goes to the restroom. I hear the door close, and I just keep eating. I kid you not, I thought he was still behind me, because it felt like someone was standing behind me looking over my shoulder. But when I turned around to give him a kiss, there was nobody there. So I shrug and go back to being on my phone when yet again, I swear, I saw what looked like him in his black shirt and work pants, walking towards our bunny cage. But when I look up, there's no one there. Another time, my best friend was over and she comes screaming out of the bathroom, telling me to hurry and go upstairs. Once we get up there, she tells me that she got out of the bathroom and saw what looked like a 7 or 8 foot tall black shadow that ducked when she looked at it. Whatever this thing is, it mimics my loved ones, and I don't like it. I was in bed and saw the same shadow she was talking about next to the bed, so I covered up my head and hid. I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it isn't good. I'm either going crazy or my apartment is haunted. At first, I thought that I was dreaming, because my first week in the bedroom I heard a female yell with surprise, "What are you doing here?" The next thing that happened is that things will go missing for weeks at a time, and pop up again in places that I'm sure I checked. Then I started seeing shadows dart across the room of my vision. This week, she let out a scared scream at the foot of my bed, like she was surprised and gasped. I went back to bed, and then this thing slapped the foot of my bed so hard that I felt the mattress dip next to my foot. I'll admit at this point I was more angry than surprised, so I told her to cut that crap out. Big mistake. Because before I wasn't sure it was being haunted, because it always happened late at night when I was almost asleep. But yesterday, she turned on an adult toy that I have. It's embarrassing. I know, but she turned it on, and I promise this is not satire. I got up and turned it off, and even put the on button facing the ceiling, in case maybe the button just got pressed down somehow. As soon as I sat it back down, she turned it back on. And at this point, I was a little scared, so I turned it back off and tried to go back to bed. She turned it on again. I threw the thing away at 4 a.m. into the dumpster on the street. I then tried to go back to bed, and I could hear her breathing next to my bed. I then got this overwhelming feeling that I was being stared at, until about 6 a.m. when I finally had it and got up out of bed anyways. I know it's a she because I've heard her voice, and it's always been scared, like I shouldn't be here. I live on an army barracks, and ending one's life is very common. My theory is that some girl took her life in the room, and that she doesn't know that she's dead. I didn't believe in ghosts before PCSing here, but I've taken to talking to her gently before I do things. I tell her that I'm about to turn on some music, or that she has the place to herself, when I leave for work. I'm honestly hoping that she just thinks I'm her roommate or something, because obviously this was her space and she isn't tracking that she's dead. She's never been violent or aggressive with me, but she has a habit of doing these things in the dead of the night and terrifying me. I need advice on what to do, because she is very real, and she's made a believer out of me, but I'd be lying if I said that she doesn't scare me. Hi, Raven. I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I listen to it every night because I can't sleep without something playing. Anyways, down to business. For reference, I'm a 17-year-old male. In June, earlier this year, me and my brother went on vacation up to Missouri to visit my grandparents. During this trip, we went to an early 1800s mansion known throughout the state as the Hunter Dawson House. As we were standing up on the front lawn and the tour guide was talking about the mansion, I began to feel uncomfortable, like I didn't belong there. I didn't want my grandma to ask anything, so I just acted interested instead. When the tour guide led us in the house, I was awestruck by the beauty of the interior. It wasn't until we finished the tour of the first floor and went upstairs that I began to feel uneasy again. For the record, I've had a general fascination with the paranormal, and when we went into the former children's room, I was just about done. The vibe was totally creepy, like someone was watching me. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up, and I kind of felt like I was going to be sick. But for the sake of my grandma, I swallowed my fear and tried to pay attention to what the tour guide was saying. After the kids' room, we went into a woman's room. The tour guide said that this room belonged to the wife of the man who built the house. As he was talking about the wife, he opened a closet, and what I saw made my heart leap into my mouth. It was a woman's dress. There wasn't anything bad about the dress. It was what or who was in it. It was one of those stuffed torso dummies that you would see in a clothing store, but for a fleeting moment, it looked like an old woman was wearing it. The woman was old with long white hair pulled up into a bun and many wrinkles. As soon as I saw her, she was gone. Soon after, the tour wrapped up and we made our way out of the house. When I stepped out through the front door, I took a huge sigh of relief. I loved the tour, but I wanted to get as far away from that house as fast as I could. For anyone who wants to go to the house and has a thing for the paranormal, just be careful. So, that, my friends, was today's Paranormal Stories collection. And hopefully, it was a collection that you found terrifying and chilling. Chilling is the word I think I used on the thumbnail. Dusted off an old template that I had for the word paranormal. Used to use that all the time on my thumbnails. Stopped using it because I lost it. And I recently found it in my files, so I'm like, you know what, let's use it for this one. It looks kind of cool, so that's why it's all smoky and hazy and creepy and... Ooh. I'm sorry. Yeah, paranormal stories. Good scary stories, ghost stories, paranormal hauntings, stuff like that. Where this channel began, literally, if you go listen to my first video, it was a paranormal video. I think my first 3 were all paranormal videos. I didn't know what the hell I was doing back then, and I sounded awful, because, you know, didn't have fancy system where I could hear myself talk, which changes how you record your audio. I don't know if you know that. Anyways, yeah, good stuff. Always a good time. And hopefully, you all enjoy these paranormal stories. I like to believe you do. And if you don't, well, I'm sorry. But if you did, could you please consider hitting that thumbs up button if you have not done so yet? A lot of you say you do so before the video even starts, and that's awesome. But if you got to this point and you haven't quite done it yet, give it a shot. It might make you feel a little better about everything. About everything. Maybe not. You won't know until you try. Yeah. If you are new to the channel and liked what you heard and want more stories like this or stories that are totally different, consider subscribing. That's, that helps the channel quite a bit. I think something like 40, 50, 42%, somewhere in there, of my listeners are not subscribed, which is kind of crazy to me. I don't know, whenever I listen to a channel, if I like the channel, I typically subscribe to it. But I guess there are people out there who just don't subscribe. And that's fine too. It's just weird to me. Maybe it's not weird to you guys, but it's weird to me. Maybe that's because it's not who I am or how I do things, and I shouldn't judge that. So if that's you, I apologize if you felt that I was judgy about that. I'm not trying to be judgy, I'm just thinking. Yeah. The other thing you can do, if you feel so inclined, is to leave me a comment down below. Which story was your favorite? Which story was your least favorite? Which story did you like the most? Which story you thought was scariest? Have you read a paranormal encounter or experience? You can tell me down there, or you can send it my way by going to astheravendreams.com and clicking the button to submit the story. I typically don't narrate stories from my comments because they're hard to find and hard to keep. They kind of get buried in other comments. Not saying I don't read them, just saying I won't be able to narrate it because it might get lost. But if you send it to me, it won't get lost. So consider that. Yeah. You can also join Patreon memberships, get early access content like this and other content if you feel so inclined as well. Never expected, always appreciated. And that's about it. All that said, friends, we're a day off from Thanksgiving here in the U.S., so if you're in the U.S. and celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. If not, well, happy Thursday tomorrow, happy Wednesday today, and yeah. All that said, friends, remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, my beautiful friends, much love, and sleep well.